The ranking member didn't write my speech, so I'm not sure what my answer to the distinguished gentleman's comments. But I will say this to my friend. I'm not for 1 year. I may vote for 1 year, but that's not what we ought to do. It ought to be paid for if it's 1 year, 2 years, permanent. There is no free lunch. You were in the automobile business. People come into your automobile store, and they'd say, I'd like to have that car for $10,000. And you say, look, I paid $20,000 for that car. I can't sell it to you for $10,000. There's no free lunch. Unpaid tax cuts are a free lunch, a pretense that somehow it's just free. But I'll tell my friend, it's not free. The chairman, who was the chairman of the Budget Committee, offered a budget which cut food stamps $125 billion. This bill is called Fighting Hunger Incentive Act. $125 billion cut in food stamps. And I tell you, my friend voted for a $40 billion cut in food stamps in the Farm Bill. I'm not for free lunches. I'm for a lot of these tax cuts. But I'm not for taking it out of the mouths of children and feeding. I'm not for taking it out of N.I.H. I'm not taking it out of our national security. We got to pay for what we buy. I vote that way. The chairman and I were one of 5 or 18 people one time that voted against a very popular bill. Had to do with Social Security. And we thought it was not paid for, not fiscally responsible. And he and I were one of 18 people in this House voted against it.
Would you yield for a moment?
I don't have much time, but maybe we can get some more.
I would just say I cannot be in better or more agreement with you.
Go ahead.
I've watched for 6 years an opportunity in the country with the greatest assets in the world, watch our working class, our middle-income people, our lower-income people suffer the greatest harm they've ever had in their life. If it's truly about getting America back to work, putting food in the mouths of our children, and being able to do all these things, the only one way to do that is to have a dynamic economy. That's what I think we need to do. I've watched it for 6 years. It is appalling what we've allowed to have happen in a country that's been blessed with so many things, but just bad policy. We can't get beyond the politics. That's what's hurting our people. It's not the fact that this is not being paid for because we're not manipulating it for a year or two. The whole purpose of why we should be here is let's raise all America. Let's get everybody looking up, being able to feed everybody. We shouldn't have to have programs for people that can't take care of themselves because by our very nature they can do that. We have all that potential.
We're claiming my time. I used to have a magic 1 minute. I don't have that now. I'd be glad to participate in debate. We have had bad policy, I tell my friend.
Great.
Terrible policy. I don't know about you, but I'm for Simpson-Bowles. The problem with Simpson-Bowles for some people is it paid for what it did, just like the Camp Bill. The Camp Bill made tough choices. And it was a zero-sum game in the sense that it cut taxes and it paid for them. A zero-sum game, just like you had to run your business. Because if you didn't run your business that way, you would have gone bankrupt. Now, I've fought for that for a very long period of time and voted that way, as I say, 1 of 18 with my friend from Wisconsin. But I tell my friend, yes, we are following bad policy. This bill, you can argue for the merits. I get that. The next bill, you can argue for the merits. And the bill after that, and the bill after that, and the bill after that. And you've then caused $600 billion in deficit spending that your kids and my kids will have to pay for because we're too old to have paid to be around long enough to pay for it. So I rise against this bill. Not because I'm against fighting hunger. Everybody ought to be against fighting hunger.
I yield the gentleman an additional 2 minutes.
Gentleman has another 2 minutes.
But when you talk about fighting hunger, don't cut food stamps $40 billion. Don't suggest the way we pay for this tax cut is to cut $125 billion from food stamps over the next 10 years, as the chairman did. I disagree with that policy. And I respect the chairman. I like the chairman. No, I can't yield anymore because I'm running out of time.
We're both Irish. You can help me.
Mr. Speaker, this is one of 2 bills that we're considering on the floor this week to make tax cuts permanent. And it's unfortunate that neither of these bills is paid for 1 year or permanently. Together, they would increase the deficit by $93 billion. Nobody's suggesting we're going to pay for that, so our kids will pay for it. Democrats support extending many of the preferences we're talking about, but we're also deeply concerned about America's fiscal future. And I've voted that way, not just talked that way. I hear a lot of talk from my friends in the majority about the debt. But that talk too often fails to translate into fiscally responsible policy. It didn't in 1981 when we cut taxes deeply and increased the national debt from the time I came here under Reagan 189%, more than any president that's been president during my term in the last 34 years. We've seen these two tax bills before, when Republicans brought them to the floor last Congress, along with several other permanent tax cuts, which together would have ballooned the deficit by more than $600 billion. That's twice what we'll spend on medical research at N.I.H., 10 times what we would cost to expand community college access. I also hear a lot of my friends on the other side of the aisle talk about a broken tax system. I tell my friend that system is going to remain broken. That system is going to remain broken unless we do what Camp did. Did I agree with everything at Camp? No, but I respected him for putting together a package of tax reform that gives what Mr. Ryan says we need, and I agree with him, certainty. People need to know. These ought to all be permanent. The R&D tax credit ought to be permanent so people can plan. America's businesses and families deserve the certainty that comes from tax reform, not partisan, piecemeal reform bills that undermine tax reform. That's what Roy Blunt was talking about. Roy Blunt has already been quoted, so I won't repeat the quote. But what he said is, long as the Finance Committee feels there's an opportunity for overall tax reform, I think you're not going to see a quick response to individual bills coming over. That's why this is bad policy, because you're not going to get from here to there unless you have a comprehensive bill that makes the tough trade-offs and summons the courage of this Congress to pass meaningful, permanent, paid-for tax certainty for our citizens. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Maryland yields back. The gentleman from Michigan reserves. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
I'll yield myself to say I truly, sincerely want to say this. I very much respect the majority whip. We've had a great relationship over the years. No, it's not one of those buts. I very much respect the gentleman. He is a class act legislator. I look forward to his support of our coming work from the committee, if he wants to be a part of tax reform. And
can I, will the gentleman?
Sure. Yeah, that was the longest magic minute I think I've seen without having a magic minute.
But no, I've done longer when I had the minute. Believe me. I want to tell the gentleman, in all sincerity, I look forward to being able to support a bill that is comprehensive, paid for, and gives our citizens and individual taxpayers the certainty they need to have the confidence they need to grow our economy.
Thank you.
I thank the gentleman for yielding.
Thank you.